Ooh.
And where does he go from here? This is an existential crisis for Harry. And I thought his reaction afterwards with the angry response to the verdict, which strangely Doreen Lawrence was a co-signatory of, but if you read the text and if you read lines like total whitewash, that doesn't sound like Doreen Lawrence to me. Sounds like Harry. So I think what's happened, guys, is that he sued in anger. You should never sue someone when you're angry. You got to have cool heads, calm, rational arguments, and it's always a risk. Instead, he's gone in like a bull in the china.
Just 2 days ago, a dramatic showdown hit the Royal Courts of Justice. It put a vital promise made by Prince Harry on July 7th under a harsh spotlight. This was no ordinary pledge. This commitment carried massive financial stakes. It was tested against the brutal reality of a soaring legal bill from a high-profile, headline-grabbing battle. Against all expectations, the promise held strong. The Guardian reported the outcome in stark terms. Doreen Lawrence will not pay a single penny, not after the failed attempt to sue the Daily Mail. This was no minor news story. Baroness Lawrence, whom Prince Harry personally convinced to join the fight in January 2022, walked away completely unscathed. No debts, no bills, nothing. The court has now officially confirmed that beyond any dispute,
And their legal team handled the case in such an exceptionally improper manner that the court should require them.
But this is where the story shifts. It is a massive detail that most news reports completely missed. While Lawrence walked away free of financial strain, those staggering legal costs did not just vanish. Instead, they ballooned massively. The court revealed that their combined insurance only covered £16.2 million, but the actual costs run up by Harry's team have soared past £34.5 million. That leaves a massive gap of at least £18.3 million. Once again, to be absolutely clear, Baroness Lawrence is not footing that bill. So who absorbs this staggering deficit? The court pointed directly to 6 key figures, now forced to shoulder the entire load. Elton John, David Furnish, Sadie Frost, Elizabeth Hurley, Simon Hughes, and Prince Harry. These are not just names on a document, they are collectively responsible for settling this massive bill. What you have to realize is that the debt did not magically disappear just because Lawrence was excused. Instead, the entire crushing weight was concentrated on this smaller group landing squarely on their shoulders. Yet, even with such a massive headline, one vital detail was quietly missed by almost everyone. Judge Nicklin, during his courtroom remarks, did not actually reveal the final figure.
Bottom line is that reputationally it's been a disaster. Financially, it's Armageddon. I mean, what is Harry on the hook for? Let's get down to brass tacks. 10, 15, $20 million is what Harry...
He made it clear that his final decision on the exact cost standard or the harsher indemnity rate will come later in a written ruling. That means we are still waiting to see the actual breakdown of how this colossal sum is split. But what the judge did make crystal clear was the urgent deadline looming over them. By August 28th, a substantial interim payment must be made with the exact sum confirmed in his upcoming judgment. Judge Nicklin stated plainly that they are going to pay a sum of money he will officially confirm in that ruling. This will be one global figure, a single lump sum that must then be divided among the 7 claimants. By the time we reach the 18-minute mark, you will understand the real power of the 3 words used by the barrister to describe this mess. You will also discover some shocking details about the legal team's actual budget. It is a double-edged sword with twists you might not expect. With just 4 weeks left until the deadline and no final numbers locked in, Prince Harry is easily the most exposed figure in the group. The promise held, the clock is ticking, and the stakes have truly never been higher. This is where the story shifts dramatically, turning a simple numbers game into a brutal financial war. On the surface, it seems bizarre. Why would protecting just one person suddenly pile all that financial heat onto the other 6?
Capable of restraining his emotions and his outbursts. He's still behaving as if he's 16 behind the bike sheds, and she said this to me, she said that to me. Can you believe?
The answer lies in the ruthless world of litigation costs. This is not about fairness. It is about cold math and who is left standing on the battlefield. The rules governing court costs do not care about feelings. It is a harsh calculation based on who remains liable after others walk free. The drama played out over 2 intense days, starting at 10:30 a.m. on July 12th in a courtroom already famous for massive decisions. Fast forward to July 29th. Judge Nicklin, the same judge who threw out all 97 allegations in a massive 436-page ruling on July 7th, faced a brand new headache. Who pays and how much? On one side stood Anthony White, King's counsel, representing the defense A&L. With cold precision, he pushed for costs to be paid on an indemnity basis, a move that completely flips the usual rules. Under this rule, A&L would not have to prove its legal spending was proportionate. They only have to show the costs were reasonably run up. This technical shift massively raises the stakes. The judge has to decide if those costs were justified without using the normal standard of proportion. Meanwhile, Nicholas Bacon, King's counsel, representing the claimants, pushed back aggressively. He argued for the standard basis, a far less punishing option that keeps costs balanced and fair. Judge Nicklin, however, chose not to hand down any immediate ruling right there in the courtroom.
It's been a reputational disaster because he sues the one newspaper that never hacked, which was the Daily Mail. He incurs the wrath of the legendary Paul Dacre, who was the editor at the time of these allegations. Harry has annoyed Mr. Justice Franklin, the heroic judge, at certain points in the trial, saying it's not your job to litigate.
Instead, his final decision would be released in writing later, adding a thick layer of suspense to this already agonizing weight. That is when the cold, hard numbers finally emerged, laying bare the massive financial canyon dividing both sides. The claimants held £16.2 million of combined insurance coverage, but A&L's bills skyrocketed to £34.5 million, leaving a staggering shortfall of at least $18.3 million. A&L's demand for an interim payment echoed loudly through the courtroom. Nearly £9.95 million, a staggering figure that underscored the monumental pressure building behind the scenes. The claimants hit back, offering just over £7.9 million, a clear clash over what was reasonable as litigation continued. Nicholas Bacon, KC, did not mince words, branding A&L's massive demand on the record as manifestly excessive. That sharp phrase showed just how far apart the two sides were in their financial expectations. Then came a crucial confirmation. The Guardian statement arrived. Lawrence was out safe. The promise Harry had made on July 7th was holding up. But while this protection was a win for Lawrence, it did not erase the financial divide. Instead, it sharpened the focus, shrinking the liable names from 7 to 6. Yet the staggering £18.3 million gap remained intact, and Harry in particular bore the brunt of that pressure.
Where does he go from here? This is an existential crisis for Harry. And I thought his reaction afterwards with the angry response to the verdict, which strangely Doreen Lawrence was a co-signatory of, but if you read the text and if you read lines like total whitewash, that doesn't sound like Doreen Lawrence to me. It sounds like Harry.
His financial situation, easily the most scrutinized and strained of them all, painted a bleak picture. The betrayal by Bowers on March 26 still haunted him a shadow, spiraling into a staggering £3 million annual burn rate. His revenue streams, a vital lifeline, were rapidly drying up on key platforms like Netflix and Spotify. Making things worse, any equity Harry held in Netflix vanished back in early March, stripping away a crucial financial safety net. Elton, one of the co-claimants with the deepest pockets, reportedly made a choice that added another twist to this drama. When directly approached about stepping in to cover the Invictus shortfall, he simply said no. He did far more than just withhold his support. He also distanced himself from Harry's post-verdict statement, leaving Harry to face the financial storm completely alone. In this swirling mix of legal maneuvering, financial strain, and broken alliances, the tension keeps building. It sets the stage for a pivotal turning point. The courtroom drama is growing complex. Every choice and every refusal reshapes the fates of everyone caught in this battle. Here is where things get tense. The original promise stands firm. No discount on the bill, and the judge's final ruling is still up in the air. The critical date looming now is August 28th, just 4 weeks away. But with no clear price tag attached to what is owed, most media reports have completely missed this detail. On July 30th, Judge Nicklin did not just declare the exact sum Harry must pay. Instead, he reserved his judgment.
That of all the famous people that came to Canada, all the presidents, all the prime ministers, the single biggest expense was Prince Harry. I mean, that does stick in the craw.
Which is the formal way judges take.
That is the formal way judges take their time to draft a detailed decision rather than handing down a ruling right from the bench. What Judge Nicklin did confirm, though, was that Harry is absolutely on the hook for cash. That figure will be confirmed in the written ruling. The critical part is the ticking clock. The deadline is August 28th. It is a bizarre situation. There is a hard deadline to meet, but absolutely no firm number on what is actually owed. Plus, the court has not decided yet if costs are standard or indemnity. That is a massive deal. Bacon KC, a top legal expert, called this choice the most financially explosive part of the entire lawsuit. To make matters more complicated, the court heard that the total bill will be a single lump sum for all 7 claimants. How that massive total gets split up among those claimants has not even been decided yet. That is a separate issue entirely. Right now, Harry faces an almost impossible challenge. He has to pay a massive bill in just 4 weeks with absolutely no way to calculate the cost or understand how it is assessed. You might think the total will land somewhere between 7.9 million and 9.9 million. Split that evenly 7 ways, and it actually sounds pretty manageable for each person. Except group lawsuits do not work that way. Cost orders are never just quietly split into equal slices. Instead, the split depends on how involved each person was, their courtroom behavior, and even their ability to pay. Complicating matters, one of the 7 claimants is already exempt from paying. Her share now gets dumped on the remaining 6, and all of this happens before the real division even starts. Which brings us to some very telling words from Annal's barrister remarks that might reveal what is next in this messy, high-stakes battle. When you look closely at this case, 3 key points stand out. These markers separate a simple defeat from a case where the court feels forced to impose harsh financial penalties. This is far more than a simple loss. It is a clear sign that something much deeper is at play here. That brings us to revelation number 2. One barrister vividly called it a banquet of litigation. Anthony White KC, arguing for indemnity costs on July 29th, painted a scathing picture of the situation. As Yahoo News UK reported, White KC accused the claimants of casting a massive net, hoping to catch some fish. Think about that metaphor, a wide net tossed into deep water, not to catch a specific proven wrongdoing, but to drag up anything at all to support their case. Then came the exact phrase that changes everything. The moment the entire narrative shifts, White KC called these proceedings the vanguard, the opening wave of what he deliberately labeled a banquet of litigation. Let that sink in. This is not neutral courtroom speak. This is a pointed, almost theatrical accusation delivered right in open court. It suggests this was never about a focused, honest complaint. It was the first salvo in a relentless series of legal battles, and White KC pushed even harder. He called the allegations extraordinarily broad and incredibly serious, completely detached from concrete evidence and driven purely by a strategic playbook. He urged the court to look at why the claimants cast such a wide net, implying the real aim was a calculated tactic to overwhelm and intimidate. The drama did not stop there. White KC pointed the court directly to a controversial moment, that post-verdict statement made by Harry himself. That statement, recently brought to light, was cast not as a simple reaction, but as a deliberate attempt to grab global attention and keep the battle alive in public. For White KC, this was much more than commentary. It was a relentless accusation against the publisher, lingering even after the court dismissed every single claim. What exactly was White KC's argument on indemnity? Simply put, it was not just about the claimants losing their case. Losing on its own would not trigger those harsher financial consequences. Instead, the sweeping scale of the claims combined with their post-verdict conduct was what, in his view, justified a much tougher penalty. On the other side, Bacon KC stood firm, fiercely fighting that interpretation. In the end, Judge Nicklin will deliver a written ruling on those indemnity costs. Yet the sheer heat of these arguments is already etched firmly into the official court record. One thing is certain, the legal and financial fallout is far from over. Now, let us look closely at the judge holding the fate of this entire case. But first, you need to hear what Annel's own barrister had to say about Baroness Lawrence. This moment is critical because it explains why the risk for the other 6 claimants is so much higher than for Lawrence. Annel's lawyer, White KC, was blunt. He admitted to feeling real sadness that Baroness Lawrence was recruited to be a national symbol, or, as he put it, a national treasure. It was a strategic legal move, and while Annel personally regrets how it looks, it is something they refuse to shy away from. Listen closely to those words. This is not just sympathy, it is a calculated admission. That word recruited carries immense weight. It shows her high profile was leveraged, her status used as a tool far beyond her own personal experience in the case. This single admission does 2 critical things at once. First, it shields Annel from looking like they are attacking a beloved public figure. After all, nobody wants to target someone with Baroness Lawrence's legacy. Second, it frames the entire lawsuit as an orchestrated campaign, one where high-profile names were recruited solely to inject weight and public sympathy into the battle. The media caught on to this quickly. The Guardian ran a clear headline: Doreen Lawrence will not pay a penny of the legal bill. That protection is absolute. But the headlines miss the actual mechanics of how this shield works. It is not magic. It hinges entirely on Prince Harry's public promise on July 7th to cover her costs personally. That raises a massive unanswered question. If Harry is the shield, and if he does not have limitless cash lying around, where does her share of the bill land? It cannot just vanish into thin air. Taking Lawrence out still leaves a massive gap of £18.3 million, and 6 other claimants are still on the hook. Think the spending ends there? Brace yourself. The revelations are not over. What the claimant's own barrister let slip about Annel's actual budget will leave you stunned. The story is just getting started. This is where the numbers get truly wild, telling a story that is hard to believe. The winning side did not just slide past their court-approved budget limits. They completely shattered it, overspending by more than what most full trials cost, and it all went down in just 3 minutes. Before looking closer at the cash, let us see where the spotlight lands now that one huge name is out of the line of fire. This brings us to our 4th revelation, the 6 remaining names. Back in October 2022, 7 claimants stepped forward. With one now officially declared exempt, 6 key players remain under the microscope. So who are they? What is their situation? Let us break this down step by step to reveal the full picture. First, Baroness Doreen Lawrence. As of July 29th, she is officially free from financial responsibility. She is completely out of the money game. Next, former Liberal Democrat politician Simon Hughes made his feelings on the verdict clear, and he was not happy. Calling it very disappointing for himself and the others, Hughes offered a raw look at his frustration, but gave no hint about his ability to pay up. Then we have Elizabeth Hurley, who has stayed incredibly quiet since the ruling went public. Sadie Frost is also keeping silent, leaving everyone guessing about her next move or how she will handle the bill. Finally, the financial heavyweight of the group, David Furnish, famously known as Sir Elton John's husband. He carries the deepest pockets and the heaviest financial backing of anyone in the group. But in a shocking turn of events, reports show he flatly refused to cover the Invictus shortfall when Prince Harry came asking for help in early July. Tellingly, his name was completely missing from Harry's post-verdict response, triggering serious pushback. Simply put, he adopted an "I am not an ATM" stance, which only fueled the fire. Then we have Prince Harry, whose name is being dragged under the microscope like never before. Financially, he is facing brutal scrutiny with rumors of a staggering $3 million in yearly spending, and his other income streams drying up. Every single penny is being watched. On July 13th, Paula Froelich summed it up bluntly. Harry simply does not have that kind of money just sitting around. So let us look at the math. Out of the 6 remaining players, one is clearly facing cash flow problems. Another has made it plain they will not pay another single dime. 2 others are keeping quiet. One is playing it cool, and the last is tied financially to someone else. Even though this massive legal bill technically targets all 6, the crushing weight of this entire financial crisis lands almost solely on Prince Harry. He is the prime target for every headline, the man whose bank account is being picked apart, and the one taking the fall in public. This isn't just a story about cash. It is about how one man becomes the lightning rod for everyone else's debts and what happens next. The exact loophole that kept Lawrence safe in the beginning has turned into a double-edged sword, dragging this entire case into a black hole of budget battles. Protecting her does more than just shift the financial burden. It forces every single headline to focus on one burning question. What exactly does Harry owe? The answers are complicated, spiraling into a mess of numbers that could backfire on the winning side in ways no one is talking about yet. Here is the massive twist that took everyone by surprise. Nicholas Bacon KC, representing the claimants, hit a total bombshell in his written arguments. Newell's team had already run up bills close to a staggering $34.5 million. Stop and think about that. That is over $18.6 million above the budget approved by the court. For perspective, the judge capped the claimants at $4.1 million in 2024, meaning they blew past their limit by more than 4 times. This is no minor slip-up. It is a massive breach of the financial rules set down by the court. The backstory makes this even more shocking. In 2024, the court dissected the proposed budgets for both sides, which added up to a massive $38.8 million. This colossal sum was deemed completely excessive and totally out of line. So strict limits were set: $4.1 million for the claimants and around $4.5 million for Newell's team to keep things reasonable. But flash forward to 2026, and Newell's actual costs exploded to $34.5 million, completely destroying those court-ordered limits. Because of this, Bacon KC tore into them, calling Newell's request for $9.9 million completely excessive, throwing their own 2024 words back at them. It is poetic justice, a warning shot to the side, demanding money, hurting their credibility. Yet, this twist does not give the claimants an easy win either. Even if the judge slashes what Newell can recover because they overspent that hard limit of $16.2 million in insurance coverage is not going anywhere. In his written warnings, Bacon cautioned what might happen if the court orders payment, leaving a cliffhanger that highlights the messy, unresolved financial fight still unfolding. These budget battles are far from finished, and every single dollar lost or recovered completely changes the game in court. Let us look closer at the tangled numbers and legal fights at the center of this battle. Picture standing in an arena of millions where every digit reveals high stakes and backroom deals. The core of the issue is how these costs are calculated, standard or indemnity. If they use indemnity, the insurance coverage will fall painfully short, leaving a massive financial hole that could easily run into millions of pounds. This is not just a guess. The claimant's own lawyer openly admitted to this shortfall in writing to the judge. Tension is building. This is not just Newell's perspective. The other side's own legal team is admitting to a massive gap, and the final outcome is totally up in the air. The court is holding back its final decision on how to calculate those costs, keeping everyone waiting. We know a temporary figure has been floated between 7.9 million and nearly 10 million pounds, but nothing is official yet, with a deadline coming on August 28th. Meanwhile, the insurance limit is capped at 16.2 million pounds, but Newell's demanded costs loom at a massive 34.5 million pounds. That leaves a giant black hole of at least 18.3 million pounds, completely uncovered. Making matters worse, the Lawrence team is off the hook for these bills, while the claimant's lawyer warns this deficit could climb into the tens of millions cranking up the tension. Let us look at the timeline of how this whole saga unfolded. It began in January 2022 when Harry personally emailed Baroness Lawrence, convincing her to join the lawsuit in a massive turning point. Jump to the 6th of October 2022, when the lawsuit was officially launched against Annual by 7 different claimants. 2 years later, in 2024, things heated up during budget hearings where the combined proposed spending almost hit $38.8 million. But Judge Cook slammed his gavel down, declaring those astronomical numbers completely excessive and totally unreasonable. The claimants were suddenly capped at just over $4.1 million, while Annual was limited to about $4.5 million, instantly cutting the projected budgets. The courtroom drama peaked in January 2026 when the 11-week trial kicked off a marathon session destined to test every ounce of legal endurance. Then came July 7th, 2026, a watershed moment when the verdict was delivered, dismissing all 97 allegations in a sprawling 436-page ruling. Amid this upheaval, Harry publicly vowed to protect Baroness Lawrence from any financial liability, offering a rare moment of solidarity amid the chaos. The story continued on July 29th, 2026, day one of a new phase, when A&L demanded an interim payment of nearly $9.95 million. Claimants pushed back, countering at just over $7.9 million. The court then heard that insurance coverage was capped at $16.2 million, starkly contrasting with A&L's towering costs of $34.5 million. Bacon KC did not hold back, revealing that A&L had already blown past its approved budget by over $18.6 million, labeling their demands as manifestly excessive. Meanwhile, White KC fired back in favor of indemnity, framing the case as emblematic of enormous financial risk and sparking intense debate over the true scale of the payout. At every twist and turn, the numbers tell a gripping story of legal strategy, financial brinkmanship, and the relentless pursuit of justice, where every single penny weighs heavily on an outcome that still hangs in the balance. Imagine a courtroom drama that stretches far beyond the headlines, a complex saga where promises, money, and reputation collide in a high-stakes legal battle that is about to reach a critical turning point. The Guardian has just confirmed the inevitable Lawrence will not be footing the bill. On the 30th of July, 2026, day 2 of the much-anticipated hearing comes to an end. After hours of testimony and legal wrangling, Judge Nicklin wraps up the session with a decisive ruling. The interim payment must be made by August 28th, but this is not just any payment. It is a global sum that must be split among 7 individuals involved in the case. Any appeal discussions are put on hold, postponed until the exact figure of that payment is finalized. Fast forward 4 weeks later to August 28th, 2026, the deadline for that interim payment looms large with only days remaining. What is unfolding is not just a financial transaction, but a tangled web of legal consequences breaking down neatly into 3 key categories that reveal the true depth of the situation. First, we have the promise, that crucial pledge made by Harry on July 7th. These were not just empty words, but a solemn vow to personally protect Baroness Doreen Lawrence. The Guardian's reporting backs this up, and even O'Neill, one of the main players in the room, acknowledged it himself in court. Harry's commitment brought a very real outcome, and that certainty is rare and significant in a case this convoluted. But here is the catch. This pledge was confirmed for only one individual, Baroness Lawrence herself. It is a narrow shield, but a powerful one. Next, the financial reality sets in, stark and unyielding. The bill refuses to shrink. In fact, it is staggering. Their insurance coverage alone reaches £16.2 million, while the combined legal expenses soar to an eye-watering £34.5 million. That is a gap of at least £18.3 million staring down everyone involved. Even the claimant's own barrister has sounded the alarm, warning that if indemnity costs, the fees awarded to the winning side, are applied, this shortfall could swell by millions more. Here is the twist. Protecting Lawrence does not close this massive financial gap. Instead, it redistributes the burden among the 6 remaining names tied to the case. The payment due on August 28th is not the final tally. It is merely an advance, a partial settlement, while the full assessment of costs continues to play out like a dramatic saga. Finally, there is the third and perhaps most intense category, the concentration effect. The financial shortfall now rests heavily on 6 people, 6 whose names must carry this enormous weight. Within this group, 2 have chosen silence, making no public comment. 1 has remained completely quiet. Another shared only a measured expression of disappointment, while 1 person reportedly declined extra funding and even removed their name from Harry's post-verdict statement. This leaves Harry, the very person who made the pledge, under the most intense scrutiny. He faces heat not just for his finances, but for a statement he authored that legal teams are now using to demand indemnity costs. The burden is shared by 6, but the pressure falls squarely on him. To sum it all up, on a date branded in history, July 7th, 2026, Harry publicly vowed to shield Baroness Doreen Lawrence from financial fallout, a promise as real as it is rare in the legal world. But with a bill that refuses to be tamed, with millions at stake, and with 6 individuals now facing the fallout, the question remains, will the pledge hold, or will the weight of this costly battle prove too heavy to bear? The coming weeks will tell the story. In January 2022, Harry took a decisive step. He promised to shield Doreen Lawrence, known affectionately and rightly as a national treasure, from any financial burden tied to this complex legal battle. Fast forward to July 29th, and that commitment was officially reinforced in court. The guarantee was set: Doreen Lawrence would face none of the legal fees. This declaration brought some relief, but it also revealed a much bigger, more tangled web of costs lurking beneath the surface. During the hearing, A&L's own barrister acknowledged Lawrence's indispensable role, referring to her as a symbol of national significance, a point that underscored the profound weight her involvement carried throughout this case. Yet, that same hearing shed light on just how enormous the financial stakes truly were. The insurance costs alone had ballooned to a staggering $16.2 million. Then came the overall legal fees, an eye-watering $34.5 million. Even with Lawrence's costs covered, there remained a minimum funding shortfall of $18.3 million that needed immediate attention. An interim demand from A&L was nearly $10 million, exactly $9,950,524.37. Meanwhile, the claimants offered just over $7.9 million. As tensions mounted, A&L's barrister dramatically described the case as a banquet of litigation, a feast of complex legal tussles requiring greater financial rigor, justifying these steep cost calculations. He even referenced Harry's own statements after the verdict, suggesting his conduct contributed directly to the heightened expense. Behind the scenes, the claimant's barrister dropped a telling revelation: A&L had significantly exceeded its budget by a whopping $18.6 million. This massive overrun set up a harsh reality. The other people left on the claim are looking at millions of dollars in liability just to plug the hole left by Lawrence's protection deal. Judge Nicklin kept his cards close. No final totals were announced today. No costs were split yet, but the judge did set a firm deadline. Pay up by August 28th. The court wanted one massive lump sum to be split up among the group later. It is a strange situation. Harry kept his promise to protect Baroness Lawrence, meaning she is completely out of the firing line. But that promise did not make the $18.3 million gap vanish. Instead, it dumped that crushing weight onto the 6 other people left in the lawsuit. How they split it is still a mystery. August 28th is coming. What do we actually know about how the others will pay? Any solid facts? Did anyone step up? A formal filing, a statement, a promise to pay, anything at all? We do not need rumors. We need hard proof. Show us the actual documents showing how they plan to settle this. So, here is the challenge. Dig deep. Find actual proof, not guesses. This is about legal fees, but it is also about real accountability. Promises kept and the massive financial fallout of a major lawsuit that we are still trying to fully wrap our heads around. If you are following this case, hit like and subscribe for more. Share this video with anyone watching these developments unfold. Drop your thoughts below. What do you think is going to happen next? Your voice matters here. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one.